Hi everyone, this is Miki Tsusaka from the Boston Consulting Group. I'm a senior partner and managing director and our chief marketing officer. Today I'm really excited to be here with Arianna Huffington, founder and CEO of Thrive Global and of course founder of Huffington Post. And she is one of the most powerful women and amazing women according to Forbes and many others. We had the pleasure of being on stage together, I think it was this April, at Women in the World that Tina Brown hosted. And I'm so delighted to be here with you today.
And I'm so delighted to be here with you. I'm a big admirer of everything you've done. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to sharing some of our ideas with the public.
Well, thank you so much. Well, the topic for today is to try to do a bit of a deep dive on workplaces and how they're changing, the impact it's having on us, the ways of building sustainability and joy into our careers. I know these are topics that you're greatly passionate about, Arianna. Would you like to say a few words to kick us off?
Yes, I'm so passionate about them that I made the decision exactly a year ago today, actually, to leave HuffPost, which was like a third child for me. As you and I were talking, you have 3 children, I have 2 daughters, and HuffPost was my third child. And leaving it in order to launch Thrive Global, which is a company entirely dedicated to creating workplaces where well-being and productivity are seen rising or falling in tandem, where there is no trade-off between the two, because all the latest science tells us how interconnected they are. And the other part of the company is a media platform where we bring together the latest science about well-being and productivity, ancient wisdom, and new role models.
Well, that sounds fantastic. I think it's such a unique entity that you've created, and we'd love to hear more about it. For those of you out there, please do type your questions into the comment box. We have about 15 minutes or so, and we'll open it up for broader questions. So let's get started. So you've just talked about Thrive and how you started it. One of the quotes you've made that I love about your past success, if I may, you said, "Don't just climb the ladder of success, a ladder that leads, after all, to higher levels of stress and burnout. Chart a new path to success so that the goal is not just to succeed, but to thrive." Please do tell us a bit more about Thrive and how what you're doing here.
So what has happened, as you know, Miki, is that philosophers and spiritual leaders, both in the East and West, have defined the good life as something more than money and power. But we've shrunken the definition of the good life to success and to just these 2 metrics. So Thrive Global is really about introducing another metric, which is our well-being, our capacity to connect with our own wisdom, to make good decisions in our life, and to also give back. And doing that both with companies, but also with individuals of all ages, and across the world. What is amazing is that wherever you go in the world, and you know, whether it's your native land of Japan or China or India or here in the US or in Europe, basically the same principles apply. For me, it's summed up beautiful in the principle of yin-yang. You know, yang is you go out, you achieve, you conquer. Yin is you come back and refuel. We've lost that. We've lost the refueling part. And as a result, people are walking around exhausted, frenetic, losing the joy of life. I'm so glad you mentioned not just sustainability, but joy. Because after all, if we lose that, despite whatever challenges life brings, that's always going to be the case. We miss kind of the point of life. Right. And we want to rekindle all that at all ages. I mean, we see mental health problems escalating among teenagers and college students, and our addiction to our devices making it harder to reconnect with ourselves.
Now, we at BCG love to talk about breaking compromises. So there's work and there's life, and we want to have it all. But you've talked a lot about what you're trying to do for the world and through Thrive. I wonder if you can share with the audience some tips that you might have in terms of how you make that happen for yourself. You're a CEO, you're a mom of 3, you're flying out.
No, only 2. You have 3, I have 2.
Excuse me. So
you have a much bigger job.
So you're flying around the world. How do you what are your routines that keep you thriving?
So we believe here in micro steps. We don't think that you change your life overnight, nor should you. I think it's just introducing healthy, tiny habits every day. And we divide them into the physical recharging, like sleep, and also movement, mental recharging through meditation, pauses throughout the day, and then spiritual recharging, which is giving back, which is creating community. And for me, sleep is the foundation of my recharging. All the latest science makes it clear that unless you have a genetic mutation, most of us need 7 to 9 hours. And when we get whatever we need, we are really operating on all cylinders. We make better decisions. We are more joyful. I wrote an entire book about it called The Sleep Revolution, so I'm very a passionate advocate. But also pauses during the day. That's very important too. Just even if it's 1 minute to take some deep breaths and recalibrate, because stress is an inevitable part of life. It's when stress becomes cumulative that's problematic. And as you know, 75% of healthcare problems are stress-related and preventable.
So I'm sure the audience out there is taking a deep breath, thinking, I need to sleep more tonight, and I need to take a deep breath. But now, perhaps we could move the conversation to an organizational one, if I may, to make it a little broader and talk about women and talk about their career choices and whatnot. We've done some work that suggests that women, the busy lives that we have, as do the men, have choices to make, and that at the end of the day, we are equally ambitious as men, and yet if you're not in the right corporate context, right organization, we find it hard to continue.
Because what we find is that despite everything we have said, women still carry the burden of childcare.
Yes.
And that is really one of the main reasons why so many women leave work and sometimes return, but many of them never return or only return part-time.
Right.
And one of the things that we are finding in our work with corporations is that when a workplace is fueled by burnout, it affects women disproportionately.
Fueled by burnout.
Yes, and as you know, many corporations are fueled by burnout.
Yes.
And what happens is that women have a harder time with stress. You know, women in stressful jobs have a 40% greater risk of heart disease, for example. So they're more likely to just leave. Also, we find that burnt out employees act out. We've been reading a lot about men acting out. And we have a lot of data that shows that when we are burnt out, we all know we operate at our worst. We have less impulse control, make worse decisions, we're less empathetic. So that's why dealing with burnout in workplaces is going to affect everything, including the position of women and their ability to rise through all the steps of their career.
Yes. We were talking earlier about some work we've done to embrace those thoughts and provide that extra time. I think any job can be done if we had that extra hour, the extra day. But to your point about the time to pause, we've certainly done a lot of work to introduce flexibility as best as we can in the context that we operate in, flex time, flex models, time off, secondments to our clients and such. We're also trying to get this obviously to be beyond a women's issue. You know, men equally thrive from the kind of things we've talked about, and we've been pleased in our firm that so many of our men have taken on these policies and these practices to attempt to manage that life-work or work-life balance, so to speak. So we're, again, I think we're with you in terms of
I
all the thoughts
actually
you
love
shared.
what you've done. I've studied it, I've included it in my book Thrive, and I loved participating at your breakfasts in Davos, although they're very early.
Depriving you of your sleep.
But I'm very glad you brought men in, because I understand that BCG has researched how millennial men are changing work culture. and how organizations need to adapt to this.
Indeed. Our Millennial Men report, one of many around these topics, I think is doing very well. And perhaps no surprise, millennial men are different than the men that are slightly older. They share some of these thoughts with the young women together, and they are more aligned in terms of these needs around flexibility and want for more from work and the life balance. They want on-site childcare even before they have children, so they already going in have a different mentality around parenting. So the results are encouraging for us. That's the next generation that will take over the world. But I think we need to shout it out loud and make sure that all organizations know about it. That's the talent pool that these companies are attracting. So we are in a new normal, I would say, and in a good sort of way.
Oh, I totally agree. It's a good sort of way. So what are some of the other measures that BCG has taken that you feel can lead to more sustainable cultures?
I think at the end of the day, we first need to know what we're doing, both in terms of, the individual and how the individual manages work life, how the corporation deals with it. And as I said earlier about women and ambition, it's not that women are not ambitious and therefore don't continue. It's setting the right context. And I think it's all about the context, making sure the support is there, making sure that the timeouts are available when needed. And it's a combination of those things. And it's not just the women doing it. I think we have many more men in our company than women. I think it's a dual gender issue and a priority. I haven't met a CEO yet that says I have enough diversity and enough life-work balance. I'm so happy with where I am.
I know, we're done.
No one. I'm looking for that person.
But tell me something also about your own personal routines. Anything that we can learn from, that we can adopt?
Well, since I read your book, I have been trying to sleep more. I haven't reached those 9 hours a day. If I said that, a lot of people won't believe me.
You may need 7, because, just to be clear, people with a genetic mutation can do with 3 or 4, but it's only 1.5% of the population. The rest is 7 to 9. You might be a 7-hour girl.
Yeah. Well, one of the hidden talents I have is I can sleep anywhere, anytime. So if I'm on a plane before takeoff, I just flew in from Tokyo. I think I was asleep before the plane was in the air. So I try to capture sleep whenever I can. To your point around physical movement, I think my travel tip is to not pack my pajamas when I travel, but pack my workout clothes. So I sleep in my workout clothes, and when I wake up groggy in the morning, I look and I have my workout clothes, and I feel like I have to move. So I trick myself into doing just a little bit. But anyway, those are just 2 tricks. But
well, you have to write about them for Thrive.
I would love to. So we're now ready to take some of your questions. If you haven't already, please put them in the comment box. Let's see. Okay, so Arianna, I think this is a question for you. Do you have any advice for women just starting their careers? I think a lot of people out there are watching today. And is that advice different if you would give it to men?
Actually, no. I think the advice is the same.
Okay.
And the advice is to stop believing the delusion that in order to succeed, you have to burn out. That's a delusion that goes way back to the first industrial revolution, when we started worshipping machines. And the goal of machines and the goal of software is to minimize downtime. But the human operating system is different, and downtime is not a bug, it's a feature. We need downtime to operate at our best. So that's my advice. I wish I knew that when I was starting my career.
I would echo that sentiment. Here's another question for you. What is the best piece of advice you've been given in your career?
So the best piece of advice I've been given is by my mom. She said to me, don't miss the moment. And so often we miss the moment.
The moment, yes.
Especially right now with our growing addiction to our phones, which are the repositories of everything, every project, every relationship, every social media interaction. It's all the more important to set boundaries. We are launching an app in partnership with Samsung at the end of December that turns your smartphone into a dumb phone. for a specified periods of time and you can't override it. So you're having a birthday dinner with your daughter and her friends. I'm sure you're not going to look at your phone anyway, but a lot of people will be tempted, even in special sacred moments like that, to go to their phone because we are all addicted. So that way, if you put your phone in thrive mode during, let's say, a dinner, or you're doing deep work, and I texted you, I would get a text back that said Miki is in thrive mode until such and such a time. So it's bi-directional, which helps change the culture. Because right now we congratulate people for being always on, which is an absurd way to live, right? So now we need to congratulate people for managing their lives well enough and knowing what their priorities are to also be able to take time off.
I love it. Thrive moments and dumb phones. I'm going to keep that in mind and we'll write about it together. Let's see, we have another question from a woman. Her question is this: what is the best way to surround yourself with strong female mentors?
Well, I've been mentored by some amazing women, and I love mentoring young women. I love this sort of cycle of life.
She wants you. But
I also love when women support other women. You know, Madeleine Albright had this great line that there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. So we must always remember that.
Yes, thank you. We have a few minutes left. Let's see, one more question. What was the most notable moment in your career up to this point, and what are you most proud of? They may be two separate questions.
I'm going to turn this to you. I'd love to know.
I am most proud of the fact that I have 3 fantastic kids. You have 2 fantastic kids. Yes, I've been working a long time. I've actually worked at BCG for 30 years, but I have 3 fantastic kids, 1 same husband, all good. My family is what I'm most proud of.
It's so interesting. I would say the same. And it's interesting how important our families, our personal lives are, even despite the fact that we've been lucky to have good careers. And I think that's important to remember because so often, as I wrote in Thrive, you know, our eulogies are very different than our resumes. Yes. And we spend most of our lives perfecting our resumes and our careers, and often ignore all these other things that ultimately give meaning to life and also are what we're remembered by.
Yes, yes. I think so. Last question. If you were in your early 30s and planning a career change, which path would you choose?
You know, my career path was so serendipitous. You know, I started my life as a writer. I've written 15 books. Launching HuffPost turned me into a businesswoman. And I'm loving that. I find that one of the things I learned is knowing when to jump. You know, so often we become trapped by our success.
Yes.
And HuffPost was a very successful media company, but I was ready for the next thing. And you know, there are never guarantees in startups. You know, we're lucky yesterday to close our Series B. So Thrive is doing well, but there was no guarantee when I jumped to launch it how it would go. So I think that's a great thing for all of us to remember, to follow that call, even when the results may be uncertain.
Absolutely. I'm in your beautiful Thrive offices here today and interacted with your team as we were getting ready. You've got something very special here, so thank you. Thanks very much for being part of this discussion today. Thank you to all of you for joining. If we didn't get to your questions, we'll do our very best to respond after the broadcast. So
yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions we didn't get to. I'm going to give you all my email address too, ah@thriveglobal.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Part of our principle here is to also listen. So we have 15,000 contributors of all ages. Some are college students, some are great thought leaders, and we want to hear from all of you. How are you navigating your life? How are you trying to make your life, as Miki said, both sustainable and joyful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arianna.
Thank you.
Thank
Such
you
a
very much.
pleasure.
Lovely to see you today.